So if you are a beginner and you are wanting to learn color pencils and you go out and let's just say you either purchase yourself a cheap color pencil, which when I mean cheap, I'm not talking about price, but you're talking about cheaper made quality type of color pencils such as the Crayola Colored Pencils, and you're wanting to use these in order to learn because you're not for sure if this is something that you're really going to be good at or maybe eventually take off with. And I wanted to go ahead and step into your shoes and go ahead and use the Crayola Colored Pencils just to kind of get a feel of them, because I haven't used these probably since I was either in high school or probably even earlier than that. And I just want to see and feel what they feel like compared to using name brand or more artist grade, should I say, colored pencils that are more higher quality. And I just want to kind of get the feel of it, and maybe I can kind of see too on if you are struggling with color pencils and you're not getting the same effects as some of these other artists do with their color pencils, then maybe it's the color pencil that you're using. Maybe it might not be the paper. You might end up buying a different paper, maybe a better one. It could not just be just the paper. It could be the actual pencil itself. So I went ahead and put it to the test and started using the Crayola Colored Pencils. And this is a 24 pack. And then I went ahead and took out my Polychromos pencils, which are a really nice, harder type of lead. So that way I got a little bit more of a better feel between the two. I know you can't really, there's a lot of artists out there that's like, you can't compare those two. What are you talking about? Of course, Polychromos is going to be so much better than Crayola. And that's just because of what it's made of. It's a higher quality pencil for artists, and also it is light fast, so that way you can use your color pencils and be able to sell your paintings. But what if you're that beginner who just doesn't want to go out and spend that type of money because you're not for sure if that's what you want to do? So I'm going to go ahead and jump into it. I'm going to do one, just a partial of an orange, and then we're going to do another partial of an orange just to kind of get a feel of the pencils, and that way I can kind of see what the differences is, and maybe it might be in relation to what you're struggling with, so that way you know whether or not you want to go ahead and upgrade yourself and maybe just buy a couple or two, or maybe just a set of 5, or I don't know, not a set of 5, but usually they come in like, maybe you got a set like 10 or 12 that you can get, that even though it's a little bit higher, it still is going to pay off. So we're just going to jump into this. I'm going to get the feel of the Crayola pencils and just kind of go over it and just see if there's any similarities to what issues you might be having also. Let's start with the Crayola Colored Pencils. Now I'm starting out with the white, and as I'm layering that white in there, I do not see it. It's almost like non-existent. And I'm putting in some little bit of light yellow in there, some little bit of orange, and just kind of seeing that maybe it might mute it a little bit, even though I don't see it. Now I am working with a more like cream-like paper, so it's not straight white. So it should show up just a little bit if it would, but it doesn't at all. And I want to tell you basically how I feel when I'm working on this. So maybe you can kind of relate to maybe some issues that maybe you're having. I am layering down one layer so far, and I'm getting the feeling of really, really wax, like a hard wax or a slick wax. When I'm using my Odorless mineral spirits to blend, I'm starting to feel like if I'm going over it and it's just so hard and slick that it's just not really, I mean, it still kind of blends it. Don't get me wrong, it still blends it, but it feels like there's still this waxy, slick covering, like a coating underneath that my brush just slips across. So it feels like I'm not melting the wax enough that it should, or, you know, it just doesn't feel right. It just feels way too slick. So I kept on going thinking that maybe once the Odorless mineral spirits dries on that first little slice, I can go back over it again and get the feeling of what it feels like to add a second layer. So as I'm putting in this second layer, I'm noticing that it still feels like it's slick and that it's not taking as much pigment as it should. Now I did not burnish. It just feels that way. It just feels really slick, like there's a a wax coating that it left behind on there. So it's really kind of a funny, slick feeling that I can't really get the coverage or more layers down as I want because of that coating. Now I still used my white in here, and you can tell it's just not showing up really white. I put a little thin layer of like an orange, a light orange in there, so that way maybe I can blend it out and see it kind of made a tone. That's good, you know, but could I have done that without using the white? Very possibly could if I just very lightly used some of the pigment, but then I might have that graininess. So I use the white to where I have a nice thick layer of pigment down, or wax, should I say, for these color pencils to be able to blend with. I'll have something on the paper to be able to blend enough pigment, even though the white is almost invisible. So when you're layering with these color pencils, it just definitely feels really waxy, and you just don't get the blendability that you should. And when you're going to add in a second layer, it feels like you're just slipping around with your pencil on that wax, and you're just not able to put enough pigment down for a second layer, and probably just forget trying to do a third layer on it. So if you are a beginner and you're trying to learn your layering process, this could really hamper you in layering properly because of the type of pencil and the way it takes the pigment. It's just really slick, and it doesn't have that same feeling. Putting the last of it down. Next is our Polychromos pencils. Now here I'm starting out with the white, and you can already see that there's white on that paper. You can already see the white that I'm putting down, and that's really nice. That's what you want to see. Because now whenever I come in with any of my oranges and I put my white and my orange on top of it, I know that it's going to give it a nice little light tone to it. It's not just like layering down a wax coat. I'm actually going to be toning it down like kind of like using a pastel, or making more of a pastel kind of color, or lightening a color. So that's what's super nice about them. Plus that, whenever I blended it out with OMS, or odorless mineral spirits, it blended really super nicely, very easily. I felt like I could feel the paper underneath whenever I'm blending. So it blended, and I still feel the paper. I still feel tooth to that paper. And I'm doing the exact same thing as I was doing on the other orange. So I'm using very similar colors. Now see, I put some white in there, and as you can see the white that I put in on top for a second layer. So that's what makes it super nice, because when you're learning and you're having to do these layers, you definitely want to learn how to be able to put a highlight on top of stuff. I mean, that's going to make and break some of your paintings, that contrast. I mean, contrast is everything. And the color pencils over on the Crayola side really puts a hamper in your contrast when you're trying to layer in some whites or put another pigment on top. Now you could work backwards trying to do what I did, where I try to leave as much of the lighter color out, and then work from light to dark. But that doesn't really help you out much. You can only go so far with it, because there is some things, like if you were doing fur and you're having to layer your lights on top of your darks, you would probably struggle just trying to get that. So it's not really the greatest pencils to be able to learn on. You'll be fighting it, and it ain't gonna be you, it's gonna be the pencil. So here I'm putting this down, putting in that white, some of the orange, and the pigment on these pencils, the Polychromos, are really nice. They're really rich colors, so that makes it super nice too. Putting in some of that yellows, and just finishing off the edge of the orange here. But see how it blends so nicely, so easily. And that's what you really want. You don't want to struggle working with something that feels like hard wax and just slips around everywhere. So just finishing off this little orange. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and hopefully it helps any beginners out there who's wanting to try color pencils and really work at it to get the same effects as some of the other artists do, or maybe like some of the drawings that I do. And you're just struggling and you're not for sure why. Don't take it out on yourself. It could be just the pencils that you're using. I know that by doing this orange, my total feeling on everything, because I know I like to sum it up for you guys, but the feeling that I get from working with the Crayola is more of a waxy feeling. And whenever you're trying to blend with an odorless mineral spirits, trying to blend with that feels like you're blending on hard wax, and it doesn't blend as well. So you're not going to get the same feeling. Whenever you go on top of it with another layer of color pencil, it feels still underneath really waxy and slick. So you're not able to layer on top as you would with a more higher quality brand, such as Polychromos, or maybe the Derwent Lightfast, or, you know, there's other ones out there. I think even Prismacolor, a lot of artists, you know, use the Prismacolor, and those pencils there would be a little bit different because you're able to layer on top of it again and have the feel of the paper whenever you're layering on top after blending with the odorless mineral spirits. So in all reality, even though you look at my orange and you look at my other orange and you think, wow, that actually looks pretty good, they look pretty similar, you can still create good artwork with it. Yes, you can still create good artwork with Crayola Colored Pencils, so don't get me wrong, but you would have to be really fluently working with color pencil and get the feeling of color pencil and the layering process. And for somebody who's just starting out, who's never really done coloring pencil, you're going to struggle. While a person who's been working with color pencils and have used maybe the Prismacolor, like I've used the Derwent Lightfast, I use the Polychromos, I use the Caradosh Luminance, you know, I'm used to layering and being able to add my layers and be able to work in stages. So when I go back to using these, I'm having to kind of shift what I'm doing. I'm having to kind of make the pencil and manipulate the pencil enough to where it actually works in my favor. Other than that, I really didn't enjoy at all working on the orange. I actually only got a quarter of the way, and the reason why I did is because I really didn't feel like continuing anymore. I just took the fun out of it. Felt like I was working harder than what I should to try and get the same outcome as I could with my Polychromos. So I decided to do a quarter piece. That's the reason why the whole orange was not done and only a partial, is because it took the joy away from it. Plus that the pencils are not straight. So you can have a pencil and it is completely like, I don't even know how to show you guys, but it is totally, this yellow one is totally like curved. It's not even straight. So it's just, and it's really tiny. I know it's more smaller of a pencil, but they're just really, really cheaply made, and they're really, really waxy. The white, forget it. The only reason why I used the white was just to add kind of a layer of wax to it, so when I went on top of it with another color and tried to blend, that it wouldn't be too strong of a color. Like it wasn't like too peach, it would just be a light tint of a color. So I really had to manipulate that white. Other than that, the white didn't really show up really that well trying to layer with it or put it down on the paper. It was almost like non-existent. It was almost like a clear wax that came from the white pencil. While if I used my Polychromos, the white did show up, and it showed up nicely whenever I try to put highlights on top of a second layer. So all in all, if you are a beginner and you are just starting out with color pencils and you're not for sure, and you're not getting the effects or the same kind of thing as other artists are, it may be the color pencil. If you need to upgrade, just to try and save up some money and either get one pencil at a time, or because I do sell some open stock on the online, or you can just go in and try and get some Prismacolor or just something that is a little bit lower in cost but a little bit more higher quality pencil, where you can still learn the layering process and try and get those effects like we do. So this is just something to help out any beginner who's wanting to do color pencil, and I hope you guys enjoyed this. Also, click the like if you like this video and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you all on the next video. Bye, you guys.